right, we are back on the Connected Design podcast, and I'm just going to mention this right up front. I am setting myself up for failure if we're just talking about accents, because I'm going to make myself look like, just some average Joe Schmo American here on a podcast with my Philly accent and my wooder and all that sort of stuff. But no, Mr. Michael Short and Mr. Giles Sutton of Crestron. Giles, the Director of Business Development, and Michael, Global VP of Marketing. Gentlemen, I appreciate you taking the time and deciding to do a podcast and put my voice to shame personally. So,
oh, it's all right. I mean, to be fair, when we look at how Giles and I have both ended up working pretty much in America for an American company through journeys from the UK, it's pretty wild.
How much do you attribute to your accent? Accents, I should say.
All of it.
Make it sound
Giles.
intelligent, Rob. Yeah. That's how it works.
I know, it's amazing. So, no, I appreciate it. Obviously, I jest, but I really could just turn it over and let you guys talk, and I'll be enthralled. But we do have questions to ask and a lot of fun, a cool topic to dive into today. But before that, I know first podcast with you guys. I know we have a bunch planned to do with you guys through at Crestron through our podcast. So, but this being the first, I want to give you a chance. I know plenty of people know, they probably recognize those voices, but I want to give you guys the chance to introduce yourselves and give a little bit of background on each of you, and just kind of set the stage for what we're going to be talking about today. So, flip a coin. Giles, I'll just throw it to you first. Introduce yourself and give a little bit of that background.
Sure. Well, thanks, Rob. And also, I have to say, it's great to see Connected Design back as well. So very excited about this. It's awesome to be involved. And yeah, we've known each other a long time. I've been in the industry for most of my working career now, I would say. So it's over 20 years. But I was an integrator for 14 years in the UK. Moved to the States, was working for Cedia as VP of Industry Engagement. Also was interim co-CEO for a little while, Cedia, the association side. So a lot of work with the design and build community, working with other partner associations as well, and running some of our regional events. Did a master's in legal studies, got it kind of interested in, cybersecurity and privacy law and things like that. So took some time out to figure out what I wanted to do. And then, about a year ago, joined Crestron to head up North American business development. So love being here. Very much what I've been doing for most of my career, which is working with specifiers, designers, architects, and developers. So that's pretty much where I am right now, and very excited to be meeting with you today as well, Rob. So thank you.
No, appreciate it. And I obviously you mentioned the connections. It's been fun to follow your career too, kind of what you've done, and having that rounded background of the integration side, but also the association side that, supporting the channel as a whole, kind of get to experience everything from all sides of the industry, and then obviously bringing those talents over to Crestron and creating a 1-2 punch. This is the last reference to the accents, but the 1-2 punch of the accents is it's perfect. So the you guys teaming up, this was like meant to be. So Michael, now your turn, right?
Awesome. And, it was great when we first had the opportunity or knew that Giles was potentially going to be available to join Crestron. Many of us were excited because of his history, his experience on the integrator side in the design build market with Cedia. So it's a real great mix. My background, based in the UK, but my teams are based both in the US and in Belgium, where we have two of our European and obviously US headquarters. I accidentally stumbled into the world of AV when I first started my career. I've specialized in marketing for most of my career in different sectors. And the opportunity came to join Crestron Europe. This is maybe 12 years ago now. I've been at Crestron for 10 years and had a little break in between, but about a 10-year stint. And I started looking after EMEA marketing. I had the opportunity to take on, as we were growing our residential business, everyone at Crestron and in the industry probably knows John Clancy reasonably well. When he joined Crestron, we were looking at growing the residential side. And from there, really, I've had the opportunity to grow within my role and now have a wider remit covering both residential and commercial, looking after PR, social, creative, marketing operations, product marketing, and have the great experience of working with lots of groups within Crestron, working with lots of dealers, the channel teams like Giles and the other sort of business development areas of the company. So really exciting for me. Like I said, 10 years at Crestron, and this industry in itself just continues to grow and change. We continue to battle away with economic problems, problems across borders. Situations just continue to be throwing punches at us, but it's a wild ride, and I think that it's still one of the most exciting industries around. We get to work with incredible people on incredible projects, and it's really fun to see and be involved in physical technology changeovers on both hardware and software. And today's topic around the touch panel or touch screen, we call it touch screens here at Crestron, but it's touch panel and touch screen, same, is a really interesting one because it's kind of at the heart of what people touch. Lots of what we do, lots of the magic is behind the scenes. Very few things do customers touch, and the touch screen is one of them. And this is a really, really interesting topic today.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you both sharing that. It obviously sets the table for today, but also future conversations that I know we hope to have. And that topic, you mentioned it's all. I feel like it's always been one of those things. I can even relate it to as a parent, right? Screen time, right? And thinking about how it's just a constant battle between whether it's parents and kids or media and like how the discussions are happening in this channel or what in any sort of facet of life, right? But it's always been sort of the thing, especially from a design standpoint, when you get into homes or commercial spaces around, directions that a space will go. So for those that aren't sure or haven't been aware, don't necessarily follow the news, I want to give just a little bit of an overview on sort of more recently some of the discussion points that have been happening. And, I don't mind calling out the publications necessarily. You can go find them if you want, but there was one in Architectural Digest that really had more to do with, I feel like, the design around a space, right? So there was an article that, addressed sort of the reemergence, we can call it, I guess. I don't know that they never ever really went away, but, switches and buttons and things like that, the tactile functions of a space and those coming back to replace, screens that people were tired of looking at and using these touch panels, touch screens. And then another coming from Residential Tech Today actually had to do with the rise of voice sort of impacting, the use of touch screens in the home. And it felt like everyone from all sides was coming at the touch screen within like a couple weeks of each other. It's like, what did the touch screen do? Like what the heck? Why are we doing this? So those are kind of the conversations that are going on. I guess just right off the bat, the instant reaction from both of you around the just hostility towards the touchscreen of late. Like what comes to mind when you see those types of conversations and editorial pieces sort of thrown out there?
I mean, I read the article as well, and it was interesting because some of the use cases, I guess, they gave of the touchscreen, I think were a little unusual. I think any integrator in this channel would not suggest that, to turn lights on and off by your bed, if you want to get up in the middle of the night, you have to go to a touch panel, go into an app, go open an app, touch, turn on a lighting scene. That is not a practical use of technology. And I think it kind of presented it in an interesting way. It sort of presented it as an either or, as opposed to having, an and. And I think some of it definitely comes from, there are touchscreens everywhere, right? There's touchscreens, and we've seen in the automotive industry where there's been a huge, leaning into touchscreens to the point where actually some automotive industries are pulling back because, there is so much you can do when you're driving and you're having to navigate. But I think that kind of illustrates the point in a way. There's ways that you can use touchscreens and where they add tremendous value, but also there is this rise of more sort of tactile, controls more kind of, I guess, more traditional in some ways that sort of complements that use. But I think some of this may come from, app and touchscreen exhaustion, that we all kind of endure, in that we all have like multiple apps for multiple things. And I think if anything, that really hammers home the value of having a centralized control system, of having one app to alleviate that, but a mixture of different interfaces in the home, whether that is voice, whether that is, traditional quote unquote keypads and tactile controls, and then also touchscreens for things that you can only do on touchscreens. You can only view a CCTV camera on a touchscreen. You can only edit a lighting scene on a touchscreen. And I'm using a touchscreen, and I know we should call them touch panels at Crestron, but there are certain things that where they are absolutely necessary to make the use of a home streamlined and simple. It's a sort of almost a weird kind of sort of crossover where it actually can become more complicated if you don't have one.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense. Michael, before getting kind of your hot take reaction to the conversation there, to a point that you made there, Giles, does it feel like a correction made, or is it like people reacting in a way where, like, to your point, touchscreens, the car is a great example. I'm glad you brought that up, because I ironically, timing wise, just upgraded from like a 2006 to like a 2026, and it is a world of difference, right? Not even just talking about safety features, but like the touch panel being in there, and it's like, now I have a TV in my car. It's a correction back. Like, is it a correction back to, like, we went too far one direction and coming back? Like, there is a balance that we're trying to find, or is it sort of that?
I think so. I think absolutely. There is I go back to the perfectly designed remote control, right? And we all know those remote controls that we've used over the years. In the UK, it was the Sky remote control, over here, maybe it's, the Roku remote control, or there are remotes where people just instinctively know where the buttons are, when you navigate them, you just know where to find them. And that kind of gets lost with the touchscreen, even and I won't mention automotive names for obvious reasons, but, when you're driving along at 70 miles an hour and you need to adjust, the temperature within the car, they now have to build in safety systems into cars to prevent you from looking away when you have to do that and you're navigating through you just can't find it while keeping your eyes on the road. It's impossible. So right. I think we're coming to a sort of convergence, a sort of a central point where an automotive is definitely moving back in some ways, where you do need controls, maybe not going quite as far as some, cars that are more known for maybe off-road, let's say. I can't mention the names, but, more off-road cars that are used quite a lot, where there's just switches everywhere. But, there is definitely a happy medium, I would say. And that's probably the same within the residential environment.
No, that's fair. Michael, kind of going back to that hot take reaction, when you see these articles and these types of commentaries out there around, touch screens or touch panels, like what is your reaction?
Initially, it's like, oh, here we go again. Well, and what I mean by that is 6 years ago, keypads, touchscreens were all going to disappear because of voice control. Everything was going to be voice. There'd be no need for a light switch in a single home. It's all going to be voice and voice. Obviously, that didn't happen because the requirement to touch something is very important in a home. There's always going to be a need to switch a light switch, to press a button. It's not going away. And then the other side of this is, and I totally agree with Giles and what you're saying with regards to, this is all about mix for the right environment, because we have this wonderful technology that is voice coming along. So let's use it in the right way. You look at keypads, and again, the Architectural Digest story, they're actually just referring to bringing back switches that are still smart. So they're not removing the keypad or replacing a touchscreen. They're taking what was a dumb light switch that might have now been a really smart keypad with 3 buttons, and actually now making it a smart keypad with an aesthetic switch. It's the same. It's still a smart keypad. So it's not replacing anything. Touchscreens don't replace light switches or keypads on the wall. Touchscreens are used in very specific environments. In fact, in many of the most high-end homes will do, you will see that, let's say in a door entry area, or maybe in the kitchen as you first walk in, there will be a touchscreen with a keypad above it or next to it because of the tactile motion of feeling it. Now, we're all saying the same thing here. We all totally agree that, the point is that the touchscreen is not going away. And actually, both the articles really were just playing sort of clickbait with regards to what this is. But there are also a little nuance maybe within the one that wasn't the Architect Digest one. It was on ResiTech Today.
Yep.
There could also be a little bit of survivorship bias maybe in some of the sourcing materials there, because both the quoted experts represented voice-based, tech-adjacent businesses, whether it was a consultant pushing voice systems in their property, and I think the other one was a platform marketeer for voice. Now, their interests lie in voice technology. Our interests actually, outside of all this, we want to sell touch screens, but we also have a really great voice control platform. And we also partner with Alexa and Google. So we also work with the best voice control platforms out there. We're open to it. And the reason why we partner with those voice control platforms and we don't make our own voice control hub and package up and sell it is we know that the touchscreen has a really important place in the home. It is required for so many experiences. And I think that in reality, finding the right mix of what, where, and how is really, really important. And I think that's where we all sort of agree on there, that the point is that it has its place, it's required, as does voice, as does a keypad, as does a keypad that looks like a beautifully designed light switch.
Yeah, I think it's important too that everything you're mentioning is that, it almost lends itself to, there's certainly misconceptions, I think, when people read a headline like that or see an article like that talking about, these displays being too prevalent in a home. They probably think like, oh, every switch in my house is now a touchpad? Like one's, maybe the size of an iPhone versus the size of an iPad. Like I have them everywhere and there's no button. Like they think it's in every room of the house. Whereas in reality, I don't think that was ever the case or the intent, right? Was to just replace all of these switches with, screens that you have to touch and things like that. It's more in moderation as opposed to, just proliferation, just to make it fun and catchy. But like putting these screens in every room was never the intent as far as, implementing this technology in a system, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no doubt that there is a design movement towards more tactile, more traditional like looking controls. And we have partners, there's multiple brands that we partner with that allow that kind of control. And I think there is even, but and it was interesting, Michael said that about voice, because I even remember when, and you all remember when the iPad came out and everyone thought that was also going to be the death of the, in-wall touch panel. But actually it's not been that. It's just another way, plus voice, plus these tactile controls. And I think it may be more that it's being associated with the complexity of all the apps on our phones. It's maybe being associated more with complexity than simplicity, which when there is something to be said for a lighting keypad or a lighting control or, tactile control, and you just instinctively know how to use it. It's right. It's labeled properly. You just go up to it. You know how to switch the room on and off, which is what everyone wants. Whereas with a panel, there is still an element where you have to learn it. You have to learn how to navigate it. So I think there's also that plays into this.
And the other thing that kind of struck me with this, and again, I don't want to rip into sort of the article too much, But the closing around the future being multi-modern, I would challenge this and say, well, I don't know if that is the future. That's what we do now. It's what we've been doing for years. You know, my home, your home, the biggest homes that we do, the spaces that Crestron are in, we use keypads, we use voice, we use automation, we use sensing, we touch, we feel. That is everything that's currently happening. And it feels like potentially the next phase of this story is more like, okay, we know that this multi-model is actually what's available right now, but what is next? And we're all having conversations about AI, which again, I don't think we should talk about on here because God, everyone is, but that potentially is what's actually next, is how do all these come together and seamlessly work for the customer and for the end user, and how does the AI layer add on to that? Because right now, all our homes are using touch, voice, sensing, automation, environmental control in one way or another.
Yeah, and to your point, that probably a future conversation. Certainly, I think that's a topic worthy of its own discussion for sure. But I know I mentioned this sort of at the top of the conversation, and I want to give you the chance. Like, do you think there's any correlation? Again, kind of biased as a parent and thinking about trying to limit screen time. I know that is such a big talking point in the parental community of wanting to reduce like this access to screens and looking at a screen. Do you think that has any impact or like reason why this is, or am I just making a leap as a sensitive parent here?
I think, and I probably shouldn't say this, our screens are not that much fun.
Fair. No, I get what you're saying.
I mean that in the nicest way in terms of, my touchscreen in this house, I love it because it's a geek. I control my home. My wife goes there and presses the button 2 or 3 times a day, maybe to pick some music or to put the shades up. But they're not that entertaining. And maybe I'm wrong, Giles. I don't know what you think, but I don't know whether that is a correlation. I could see it with the phone, because if we're controlling and using the Crestron Home app on your phone, then I sit there on the sofa sometimes and open my phone to control the light in the room because the remote's somewhere else, and you pick up your phone and your kids see you on the phone. Yeah, that's not good. But the actual touchscreen, I think it's maybe a stretch. But Giles, I don't know. What did your gut say with that?
No, yeah, I agree. I'm not sure it is a screen time thing. I think it's more a simplicity thing. I think in some ways it's more being associated with the multiple apps to navigate, a steep learning curve. I'm not sure it's a screen time issue. I'd agree with Michael. Yeah, that I think they're not that much fun, but that illustrates the functional nature of them. And at the end of the day, I do hear a lot from specifiers. We just want simplicity. We don't need a system. We don't need a lights control system. We just want simple switches. That's something.
Yeah.
But there's a point where simplicity, in the pursuit of simplicity, it suddenly becomes complicated. There's a tipping point. Like, say, an open plan living area where you have a dining room, a dining area, maybe you have a living space, you have a kitchen, then you have outdoor lighting. Think how many lighting zones you have in that one space.
Right.
How many places you will need to have rocker switches and dimmers. If that's simplicity, I don't think that's what people would view as very easy to use at all. So I think that's where it's really where people are sort of associating it, where that's a tactile switch, that's a rocker switch, that they understand how those work. But in general day-to-day life, that is a nightmare to use, when you have like multiple switches everywhere.
No, makes sense. And hey, at the very least, comforting to me as the parent that it's not that at the very least. Yeah. So no, I appreciate you both. And maybe another parent gets comforted in hearing that as well. It's like just one less conversation because it happens at school. Like it's everywhere, man. So, let's remove it from this conversation and move on. But one thing I know too is that it's all of these discussions. It's great. People write words. They have these discussions like this. and talk about, the death of the touchscreen, or however you want to phrase it, and clickbaity type, approach to get people to read your opinion. There's data out there, I'm sure, and you guys,
totally.
yeah. So
Totally.
like where does it actually lie as far as there's all this discussion around touch panels going away? Are they?
So I actually was looking at some of our data this morning, not particularly for this call, just as part of internal conversations, and they are certainly not going away for Crestron. When we look at the number of touchscreens per project, when we look at the number of touchscreen sales that we're making, it is a category that is extremely strong for us and is growing. So we're not seeing that in the homes that we're working on. I actually feel like from a dealer's standpoint, for them, it is a product that they can suggest and utilize in multiple areas. It's a great opportunity to put a solution in multiple places. So from our data, I know that we're not seeing it decline. I know that we've just moved to our new 80 series. And again, we're seeing amazing trajectory in that product line as well. So I know our data isn't saying that. From the design build standpoint, Giles, do you get much pushback from designers and architects on, I can't put an ugly touchscreen? I think our touchscreens are beautiful, by the way. But do you ever get that sense that they don't want that? Or is it a bit like, well, we know that we're going to have to put a TV on a wall, and in many cases, I know they might hide it, but touchscreens, I believe, are quite aesthetically pleasing in many styles of homes. But what do you hear?
I mean, it's not so much on the touchscreens. I think the touchscreens, there's an acceptance that you need to have them in certain areas of the home. Again, that's why it's surprising to see this article, I think, from our standpoint. There's an acceptance that you need to have them in certain areas of the home. We don't get a lot of pushback on that. I think that the area that the specifiers, the designers really look at is the keypad, the lighting keypad. That's really one where they're really concerned about the number, the finish of that, the look and feel. And I think that's where we have great options, both from our own keypad offering, plus working with partners as well. So I'd also just say, in terms of what you quoted in terms of touchscreen sales, Michael, we've seen, not just from within other channel manufacturers that may have started in voice that have then evolved, but we've also seen from sort of those IoT, more sort of consumer-based products that have started with voice, like, Google and Amazon, that have now sort of evolved, then have hub touchscreen offerings. So it shows that there is demand for those, I would say, across the board. I think our touchscreens are beautiful. I think when it comes to touchscreens, I think there is opportunity also for innovation. I think that's also something we need to think about, that there are things that we can borrow from the iPhone in terms of facial recognition, maybe near field technology. There's things where I think the touchscreen still has room to evolve, to actually then add more. There's more use cases around it in the home. Personalization to different users as they walk up to it. And different family members, different access levels, from a guest through to a homeowner. So I think there's more that we can do with a touchscreen to make it more useful, as well as maybe there's things to, evolving it into other areas. As we said earlier, AI could be a whole separate conversation if we wanted it to be. But there's ways that there are certainly things that, from the more consumer IoT world that I just mentioned, there are some very useful things to those touchscreens that we use in terms of bringing in recipes and how long it's going to take you on your commute to the office and things like that maybe can start to come into the pro channel.
And I'm glad you mentioned all that, because I think that gets to, for anyone that sees these types of commentaries, or maybe just inherently has these opinions of themselves out there around touchscreens in the home, everything you just mentioned kind of gets to how, whether it's someone from your team or an integrator out there, how to approach those professionals or the homeowner to almost alleviate those concerns, or just help them make sense of why this type of technology is necessary, might be the word you want to use, right? But is something that makes sense to have in this home, or in the project that you're working on, because of all of the ways that a couple of tactile switches aren't going to be able to do that today. God knows who knows with AI, and technology advancements, right? But those types of things are only possible right now with the technology that you guys have, and putting these touch panels within a home.
Totally, and I think Giles mentioned one thing earlier on with regards to security cameras and being able to view cameras on a screen. So when you're having that conversation with customers, especially when you think of you walk into a lobby or your front porch or whatever it might be on the scale of homes. Now, in many homes, there's a light switch, there's a security camera screen, there's a number pad to set your alarms. There's all these devices on the wall. This can be replaced by the touchscreen that can do cameras, it can do your security pins, it can do your lights, it can do your goodbye, your welcome scenes. It can be set just for your home screen. At night, it can light up for you when you come in through the front door so you can see it. It can be all these great things at the front door. So when Giles mentions cameras at the start of this call, that is a huge advantage of a touchscreen in that space. Then in other areas of the home, for me, it's all about it being felt like this is like the heartbeat of the room. At any point, it doesn't replace the keypads and the light switches as you first walk into the room to activate a lighting scene, to activate on off, to do things. That's fine. That can be on a 5-button keypad and can control lots of things. But when you're in your big open plan kitchen and you're entertaining guests and people want to select music, or you want to click a scene, or you want to search for something, or you want to page the kids who are upstairs in a different room, you can only do that from a panel on the wall that has access to these things. And that is why you pay for a professional smart home, to get all that stuff centered on that beautiful singular screen. So it is a conversation that hopefully everyone's having, because it's important for me. It's one of the most exciting things that I think exists within a Pro Smart Home. Your friends don't have that. Your neighbours doesn't have that. When they walk into the room, and I know it's not all about showing off, it's about lifestyle. When people walk in and they see a touchscreen on the wall, it's like, whoa, what's that? That's cool. That's great. I believe that's part of the sale as well.
Yeah, for sure. It's that experience that it provides, and it's something that you hope someday we get to a point where you walk in and that is normal to see, right? But right now it is that differentiator, or just the thing that it's the cool to have. Like it is awesome, and something that makes you think something's different about this space or this home and what you can do within it. But kind of button it up. Like I feel like all of what we've talked about, clearly there's like a happy medium with all of this, but at the very least, the headline should be that the death of the touchscreen is overstated, right? Right? This is not like the touchscreen is dead, long live the touchscreen. Like, no, it's here to stay and has a purpose, and something that we'll certainly continue to see and understand more about. And I know too the use cases are going to evolve for this as well, like for this technology as well. So to see, you talked about so many, Giles, so many use cases and things that make it different. I can't even imagine 3, 5, 10 years from now what these screens are going to be able to do within a home, and how we'll be using them then, because I'm sure it's just like AI and other technologies out there. It's evolving every day, so it'll be something to experience. But no, this was a cool conversation, guys. I appreciate you diving into it, allowing me to speak. I said no more talking about that, but I can't not end a podcast with you two talking about accents. But no, I appreciate you sharing it all and diving into it, because it's one that hey, we can have this conversation, but it's certainly going to continue, and To have you guys as a voice out there, no pun intended there, talking about touchscreens, it's important. So thank you for that.
It's a pleasure.
Oh, thank you.